All right, 1:32. So we will go ahead and call the November MUD 6 meeting to order. Deborah Sargent is out of country, so I'll be presiding in her absence. All other directors are here. We do have a quorum. Do we have any comments from the public?
I have a question. If I make a request to move an item to a different location in the agenda, is this the time to do it, or would it be under item 3?
Should have waited for Brian.
Probably under item 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
President can make that adjustment today.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Make that if
So
he so chooses.
I request to move item 12 to after item 17 on the agenda.
All right. Yep. So we will move item 12 for executive session.
Yes.
All right. All right. Any other comments from directors?
Oh, I have a comment.
Public,
We did ask. You did ask.
okay.
Yep.
No comment.
USGS just recently published a study in the journal Science. It's on predictions of groundwater PFAS in the drinking water supply of groundwater. And very fortunately, we are living in a location that has a lower probability of PFAS in our groundwater supplies. So if anyone wants to look at this, it's a very interesting paper. It's rather complicated in terms of the math, but it's worthwhile thinking about. I know we're in the process of testing, are we not, in MUD 6? So we shall see how that turns out. And we are mostly receiving our water from the Jasper. Is that right, Chris? The Jasper.
Yeah, 80.
So the older the water, it's much less likely that there would be PFAS in the water supply.
Correct. And we've done raw water sampling of the wells themselves, and none of the 5, 6 regulated are popping up.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay.
MUD 6 will begin sampling in January of 2025. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 districts that are complete. Hadn't been any PFAS indicated.
Right.
And then MUD 6 and 39 will start in January. And then MUDs 1 and 36 are the last ones. 46 will be later next year.
Okay. Very good.
All right.
Don't we need a lawyer?
Is Brian out there? All right. Any other director comments? Brian, just to clarify, we are able to change the order of an agenda item okay, excellent. All right. Do we have any requests for adjustments? All right. Takes us to the consent agenda, items 5 through 9. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Move into item 10, receive regular monthly SRA update.
All right, so just a few updates. First, the financials are not in your packet. They are up here. If you do not have one and would like one, I will pass one to you. They are the September financials. They're not the October financials. We're getting closer to giving them a month behind, but now we're still 2 months behind. When you're looking at these financials, just keep in mind, this is the first month after year-end close, so the numbers are off slightly. There was not enough accruals done. So for example, it shows we're just 2.7 million under budget. However, the biggest part of that GRP shows not to be paid. So we normally correct that in October, and you should see that corrected next month. Next item is your projects that begin on page 18. I've changed the format on y'all yet again. Trying to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So one of the key items is location. I've changed, instead of just saying MUD 6, I'm actually putting intersections, streets, addresses, whatever's relevant. So if you're driving by, maybe you'll have a relation to what's actually occurring where. But If you see or don't see, I guess, anything that's missing, let me know. I'll be glad to add it in. After all, it's for y'all. So if you need more, need less, just let me know. We'll change from there. Last item I have is not in your packet, but it is related to a GRP water line. You may have noticed at the intersection of Research Forest and Grogan's Mill, southwest corner. Yeah, southwest corner, there's a line break. So there's an excavation active repair underway. It's a 30-inch PVC line, broke last time in 2022 and broke again a couple days ago. So should be fixing that through Friday is what we've given the contractor to have it fixed by.
That relatively new line?
That was installed around 2014. So
What's causing the breaks?
this appears to be in a bind. So instead of, long story short, they were supposed to put in fittings and have a drop. There's a 20-inch difference between where the pipe in the ground is 100 foot away and where the fitting is, where it broke this time. And so instead of actually putting a fitting to correct to it, they just bent the PVC to fit into it. And so,
Put that under additional stress, given that it's pressurized.
Correct.
Okay.
so we're going back in with ductile pipe and replacing collectively about 100 foot of pipe to get rid of the bind with the proper fittings.
Okay.
Are there other points in the line where that's going to be a risk in the future?
15 to 20 is what we've counted so far.
Okay.
And these do not include the original 4 that have already broken. And so conversations are underway to see, do we want to go ahead and preemptively go in there and replace those areas, at least dig them up and see if they have the proper fittings. And if they do, leave them be. But if they don't, go ahead and start replacing those areas that may be broken later.
Is this a similar kind of issue as was seen in the breaks in the water line along Woodlands Parkway going out west? Is it the same kind of issue?
Same issue, same contractor, everything, same pipe material, everything's the same from Woodlands Parkway and Grogan's Mill. And then the ones that were on Research Forest earlier, like 5 years ago plus. So all the same issue.
Is it recourse against the contractor?
Lawsuits occurred a couple years ago, and whatever was done is sealed behind confidential information that I have no idea what they did. So I just make senior management aware of what's occurring, and then they take it from there since they know what's behind the confidential. All I have, unless you have any questions.
Any specific notes or comments on the groundwater well level charts?
Just something to pay attention to. Neil has brought up a point that was not as obvious. So Neil, I responded to your email. This is,
So our reply.
we are still looking into, and I'll briefly explain, Neil, you probably can do it better, between pages 26 and 27. If you take the time period between 2010 and 2015 on page 26, kind of how you have the seesaw pattern, pretty jagged pattern. If you compare that same time period on page 27, you don't see that seesaw pattern. And so what I've done is I've passed this to somebody in the company who knows Excel and the graphing far better than me, and just ask, because all the data lines up to be exactly the same. Just want to see if there's something that was done in the graph to remove that seesaw pattern. But we're looking into that. So could be a graphical issue here.
Yeah, just for to fill things out. I took a snapshot of the graph on page 26 from the year 2010 up to the current year, and then just overlaid it on the graph on page 27 by using appropriate stretching, looking to see where the issue that Chris just described is. So, because of the two different scales, and sometimes it's a little hard to compare, but once you do that comparison, you can see. I mean,
Oh yeah, with the transparency that you put in there, it was a slideshow. I was just doing this just to see, and it's night and day.
right.
So, yeah. But besides that, the key thing that I guess the takeaway is the Evangeline, we do use 15% of your groundwater comes from the Evangeline in the Woodlands. The other 85% comes from pages 28 and 29.
Mhm.
And so even though the Woodlands is using 50% surface water, you'll notice over time, around 2015, 2016 is when you can see the jump up in the aquifers. So that's when surface water came in at 65%. regulations through the entire county, so on and so forth. 2020 is when the regulations went away. That's when people started using more groundwater. Woodlands went down to 35%, came up to 50. Long story short, what you'll see is the decline in the aquifers is still there. So even though the Woodlands is at 50%, there's every other community that uses surface water, which is 6 other ones. They're roughly at 30%, maybe 35%, which growth in the community, more groundwater withdrawal, your aquifers are going to be dropping. And so your drops, your lowest points now in about 23, 24 are getting very similar, if not a little bit lower than back in 2013 when you had the lowest points then.
I know we're talking about GRP later in the meeting. Is it your opinion that a 50-50 blend, if the demand and the users weren't declining, would the aquifer level still be static?
Just for the Woodlands or everybody?
I guess both.
So just in the Woodlands, no. I mean, you're not going to be able to offset the entire county. Your water usage isn't enough. You use 3 billion gallons of water, which is the biggest in the county so far, but not when you put them all together, right? So GRP's annual groundwater production is about 18 billion in groundwater. So, I mean, you're a big drop in the bucket, but you're a drop in the bucket. So you'd have more impact if every other entity was at 50%. And then, of course, as will be discussed and has been discussed, if you branch out and provide surface water to others as well.
All right. Any other questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris. All right, moving to item 11, review draft water reclamation facility number 1 decision matrix. I think that's you, Eric.
Sure. So in your packets, you have a couple different documents that they look like this. Start, and then that is the last page of it. If you recall, 2 months ago, there was for the wastewater treatment plant, SJA was had a consultant, Corello Engineers, third-party consultant, come in, and they're doing the evaluation of the 4 options for the wastewater treatment plant. As part of that analysis, or separate from, there was to be a decision matrix that would be provided. The intention that it would be utilized to help make some decisions once the evaluation was complete of the options. So that's what you see here before you. The Corello Engineers came to the trustee meeting last week and gave a presentation, which a copy is up there if you want it. That's that Neil has. There was conversation at the trustee meeting related to, so what you have here on these sheets is essentially they broke up the decision matrix into 7 criteria to be evaluated, that each of the options would be evaluated on. And then those were broken further down into sub-criteria within each of those criteria. And you can see kind of the definitions of the sub-criteria there. There was some discussion and questions related to the wording and how some of these definitions were listed. And so we agreed to basically have everybody give any comments that they may have to me by the end of this month, so that we can forward that on to the consultant to do some refining and finalizing of the criteria and sub-criteria. So I'd offer that same thing to the board as well. If you'd like to kind of go through this, read through the criteria, sub-criteria, if there's any questions that come about, let me know by the end of this month, and I'll get them on to the consultant. The action item, in addition to your comments on the criteria and sub-criteria, another action item that we'll need to accomplish by January meetings is to fill out the paired comparison worksheet. And the way this works is it basically essentially says, well, criteria X versus criteria Y, which one is more important to you? And it kind of compares all of the criteria against each other. And then based upon, if you hold cost more important, then obviously you would choose that. If you hold, one of the other criteria, you choose that as it's compared against the various different criteria. So we'll need one of these from each MUD to be completed by the January meeting. Couple of different ways that the MUDs can do it. Each director can do it on their own. Give them to me. I can consolidate all of them into one. A couple of districts have decided, let's just have a workshop and do it together. And then the other option would be to have an individual do it and then send it out to the directors. But not sure if anyone's actually doing that method. More of them are either doing 5 of them on their own and I'll compile them, or they're having a workshop meeting and do it together. That's the majority of, I think, what everybody's doing so far.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that's it.
Okay. So, these subcategories do have me concern, and other trustees expressed some concerns. For example, under treatment effectiveness, as an example, and then the question is, can the alternative meet the TCQ Chapter 217 and WRF and 1 permit requirements? Well, here is the thing. According to our contract with SJRA, and that's going back to 75, the parties agree that the water supply and, in this particular case, waste disposal systems must comply fully with all regulatory requirements, and the parties recognize that regulatory requirements will change from time to time. So from my perspective, that question is moot on whether or not the alternatives will comply with permits. They all must comply with permit regulations. I mean, that's the contract.
You're saying it should be a non-starter.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just starting to pull through this, and I will have a volume for you on this. I have to say, I'm a little disappointed with Corolla. I was expecting better than this, but that's me. So anyway, there's some other questions I have in terms of partitioning of responsibilities between SJRA and MUDs and Woodlands Water in involvement with projects. It's not clear to me how this information is going to be used, because according to the contract, SJRA has the sole authority of doing engineering and bringing that recommendation and costs and so forth to the MUDs, to Woodlands Water and the MUDs for review. And there's wording in the contract in relation to that. So I think there's some digging to be done before we can really start to get into this question about how this is used and how involved MUDs get into the process that SJRA has to undertake. So there are multiple questions arising from the contract, but I have one question for Brian on this particular subject. So there's a section in here, section 11.2, and the heading is independent contractor. The authority shall be an independent contractor. What does that mean specifically?
Oh, that's with the river authority, not for the districts.
Right. So the authority shall be solely responsible for operation and so forth and so on.
Means they're not an employee of the river authority.
Who isn't? Sorry, I'm a little.
Which
This is section 11.2 in the contract
of
between MUD6 and SJRA.
means that the river authority is an independent contractor, is not an employee of the district.
Okay, and what does that mean?
It means that they operate independently of the district.
Okay. So with the creation of this analysis in which the MUDs are involved, is that moving over? Is that blurring the line between independent contractor and some kind of other arrangement?
You're talking about the level of oversight?
No, I'm talking about the active involvement in looking at criteria and passing this information on to SJRA.
Well, at this point, my understanding of the way this is structured or the intent goes back to a comment that was made at one of the trustee meetings of having a decision matrix, the purpose of which is to get buy-in by all of the districts in order to have everyone feel like whatever the outcome is can be supported.
Right.
But that's going to be used by Carrillo in evaluating the options.
Okay.
And so that's, my understanding is that's who's going to be using this matrix to be able to evaluate the options. The River Authority is going to provide a sheet just like the MUDs provide a sheet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where I was getting confused. I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second, what are we
Okay.
talking about here?
Yeah. Okay. So SJRA is also working on a similar
Correct.
set of criteria, the
Well,
same?
they're doing a scoring
Exactly.
scale just like each of the districts will do.
I see.
So there'll be 11 in total.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, actually 12 with 386.
With 386, and then the River
Okay.
Authority, we're breaking it up similar to the MUDs. You're breaking it up each of them. It could be one from the trustees and y'all can be one and done.
Yeah.
We can do one from the authority, or we could do one for management, one for engineering, one for operations, one for maintenance. So the potential is there for us to have up to 10.
Okay.
So
That is covered in a sense in the contract because there is some wording to the effect that the two entities have to work together, collaborate.
You're talking about in the back to the agreement between the
Yeah.
MUD and the
Yeah.
River Authority, right?
That's right, the June 1975, that
Yeah,
agreement.
that's talking about the River Authority's role in operating our facilities. But what this is really given a roadmap, for lack of a better term, to the consultant on how to evaluate the 4 different options and come back with a recommendation to the River Authority and the districts.
And our expectation is there's still going to be something in terms of a process, I would assume, to gain commitment prior to the recommendation coming back around this decision matrix.
Well, that's the hope, is that we can get, because ultimately you're gonna have to have, as we talked about before, you're gonna have a supplemental agreement to the agreement that Neil is referring to that would allow for bond financing of major improvements. Now, if it's repair is the option that's selected, and if that can be cash funded, I have no idea. But the whole issue that we've been dealing with is the potential need to have the River Authority bond finance for major repair and replacement. And in order to do that, we need a supplemental agreement. And we need that from, from all of our participants. And we need, in order to get there, we need buy-in and support for what the ultimate outcome is. And I think this matrix is intended to be a way to get that buy-in from all the participant districts.
Yeah, that was in the back of my mind, that there would be potentially some supplemental agreement given the
Would have
costs,
to be.
the costs involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So presumably the consultant will end up taking those worksheets and then that'll determine the weighting of the 7 criteria. Okay. All right. Just a quick question. The only ones that stand out looking at it, 3A and 3C, certainly there's some differences in the technology regarding, conventionals obviously been around longer. Do we know if they're going to specify timing on how they're going to do that comparison between the options? 3A is specifically the number of installations in the US and Texas, and then 3C, the maturity of process technology. Obviously, those are not apples to apples.
Yes, that line item was one of the ones that was questioned, and so I would just suggest, give me that information and I'll get it to them.
Okay.
And they'll refine this.
So can we review, how does the board want to proceed? I mean, do we each send, Eric our comments, or do we have a workshop or a workshop?
That would be too.
And
If
Well,
I
I
have a
think
better
for the
understanding.
preliminary questions, I think you need that before the end of November.
Yeah,
Stay on time.
ideally, if we get that by the end of the month or at the end of the month, then the consultant will take that, and ideally then refine these so that, it will be a little bit cleaner, clearer to be able to fill that out. If anyone has, just, like for instance, if this says, okay, do you value treatment effectiveness versus constructability and sequencing? Okay, what does that mean, right? So then you got to go to this. Well, if you don't understand this, then it may be difficult to answer that. Which one you hold. Now, obviously, cost is easy. It either is or is an important thing. So, so that's the intention, is to try to get this cleaned up so that folks understand it a little bit better and it's cleaner or clearer to facilitate filling this out. So ideally, if we do have a workshop, then we'll have a cleaned up version of that to be able to do that with, to be able to fill out.
So the first stage would just be us sending in questions about the definitions themselves.
Correct.
And I would assume, I was looking at the packet that was presented to the trustees, so there'll be a 1 through 5 scoring on each of those subcategories. I would assume that preliminary feedback from the consultant would not include details on the scoring, just because that would introduce the possibility of bias and the
Yeah,
ranking.
they did mention that they would be developing that. So that there is some objectivity to that scoring, as it relates to the sub criteria.
Okay. So we will have the sub criteria scoring prior to returning that ranking?
No.
Okay.
No, you'll have a cleaned up version.
Also the definitions.
That's right.
Okay. So I guess the first thing for us, we would just individually send this to you by the end of November. And then.
Yeah, December 2nd's a Monday, so we kind of talked about the 1st or 2nd, just anywhere right there.
Okay.
Well, hopefully before that.
Or before that, if possibly, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And then once we have that, then we would decide how to move forward with the worksheet. So the different approaches you mentioned on the worksheet were what's.
Have a workshop or fill it out individually and send it in, and I can collate those.
Okay. Your preference.
So Deborah's not here. How are we going to get her up to speed on what's going on?
Is this something you can solicit from Deborah, Eric, as far as questions on
Yeah,
that?
we can get her the packet and she can take a shot at the sub criteria, see if she has
The question is,
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you choose to do a workshop, then just schedule that presumably at the normal time.
Okay. Yeah, that would
If that's what you
be an
want.
open meeting. In December, I think the previous conversations would be that we weren't having a December meeting. So would you guys would want to have a December meeting to workshop that?
the workshop.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as it's before December 22nd.
That day will be out for me.
I believe it's out for me. I'll have to look at my calendar. December 18th, I believe it is.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Y'all could also, so there's a few ways to do it. And if you want to do a workshop, it doesn't have to be on the board meeting date. I think there's only 2 districts doing one on the Tuesday. So if there was a time on Tuesday that worked for y'all before 4:30, I think those are the 2 districts so far, was the 4:30 and 6 o'clock that wanted to do a workshop. You could do that Tuesday. You could also do one in January for your regular MUD meeting. I think that's when we need the MUDs to have made a decision. Or was that the trustees? The trustees provided that. I'm trying to remember what was the January deadline.
Filling out the various worksheets.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
could that be just any time before the MUD meeting, I suppose, or by the end of January? So y'all could.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it just needs to be done by the
Yeah.
January meetings. It could be, you could push it to the, after the first of the year if you wanted to,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Either have a special meeting before your January meeting or roll this into part of your January meeting to go through your individual scoring.
So we need this prior by the MUD meetings, not the trustee meeting in January.
It sounds like by the end of the month, so you could do this as part of your January meeting if you wanted to.
We have some time
Okay,
constraints
yeah,
because
take
there's
a little time.
Yeah.
number of months meeting. There's 5 meetings on Wednesday? Something. So I don't know if we'll have enough time to be able to go through.
Talking about the regular meeting, yeah, that's kind of the last option. I think it would be either, if you want to have a workshop, you could do it the day before, your regular meeting in December,
Mhm.
since we only have 2 workshops scheduled sometime before 4:30. Or do it, in January sometime that was work for everybody's schedule and for, Eric's schedule before your regular January month meeting.
So that would be, if it's a Tuesday, it'd be December the 17th.
Where's the window right now that potentially open on the 17th?
Anytime before 4:30, so the noon, the 1:30, the 3 o'clock.
Would the 16th be an option that Monday?
That's really Eric's call. I don't think there's any meeting scheduled for that
I'll be
day.
traveling the 17th or the 19th. For the 16th.
That day. What are you thinking?
That's my open that day.
I'm wide open too.
Yeah. What works best for you, Eric?
I believe Metro's not having their meeting. I mean, anytime 4 and on. Probably.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock?
All right.
Okay,
4 o'clock on the 16th,
16th.
Monday the 16th.
All right, excellent. So we'll workshop it that day, and then in the meantime, by the end of the month, we'll send in our questions on the sub-criteria and definitions. All right,
Okay, thank you.
excellent. Item 12 was moved till after executive session, so we will move to item 13, receive the attorney's reports.
Nothing in the attorney's report today.
All right. Item 14, receive and act on the general manager's report.
Okay, just a couple things to note. The community work group as part of the water renewal of Woodlands, the community work group has been identified and the first meeting has been set for December 2nd at 11:30 at the township. And so that'll be the kickoff meeting for that. Wanted to point out that we will be running the ditches to do some ditch assessment, ditch piping assessment. As I mentioned, I think earlier this year, we're looking to build up kind of a capital improvement / project plan going forward for WWA assets, smaller water diameter lines, sanitary sewer, and then ditches and ditch piping. And so we will be starting running the ditches next week. The mowing, October mowings were done. So we're gonna jump out there and start assessing. And we'll utilize that data to help develop the capital improvement plan early next year in time for hopefully budget discussions in the early summer. So, and I think that's all I had. Oh, you get over to John for communications.
But about the disconnects,
Sure. The disconnects.
it just your graph, it just seemed like in October, there was a whole lot more than the previous year. And then I noticed that in the budget too, that there was a whole bunch in the budget. I just was curious why that went right up, door hangers and disconnects.
It's, we don't ever really have the answer on
Okay.
why people don't pay their bill at times. I will say this time of year, sometimes it does go up a little bit as folks are looking to utilize their funds for other things.
I
Perhaps.
wondered if there was a lot of movement in the Woodlands, people moving out, people
Well,
moving.
there's definitely that for sure. But it does ramp up a little bit in the holiday seasons.
It's just greater than it was last year. Okay, thank you.
Just had a question on page 45 about the water line breaks. The two that are here. Normally, you would call 811, right, to get the location information of utility lines, et cetera. Is that correct? Well, how's that work?
Yeah, a contractor would call to have utilities marked.
Mhm.
And then they would need to, we're not in it, 811, so they would need to contact us for us to
Okay.
to
I
help them.
understand.
Also, dry utilities are typically marked. The piping itself
Mhm.
has a magnetic strip. Water lines don't have that.
Okay.
So what we have to do is look at the drawings and say, okay, we'll mark it and say it's approximately here and it's approximately 8 feet deep, 10 feet deep, whatever it is.
Okay,
We rarely get those calls. Sometimes if we do, we'll definitely go out and do our best to mark and help guide the contractor on where to go. But most of them just plow through and just go.
well, yeah, that's what,
That's what we're dealing with.
yeah, okay. Yeah, Takas was regular basis.
Previously, yeah, this wasn't them.
Yeah,
The
well,
one on, like, for instance, Research and Research Park, it was a fiber subcontractor, and all of the other dry utilities were marked in that area, but
yeah,
they just
Yeah.
drilled right through the water line.
all right, thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Sorry, John.
John?
No worries. Page 49 is your communications report. Couple other things to note there on infrastructure renewal. Eric noted the upcoming working group first session on the 2nd. We do have the community survey results on the Google Drive for you. So you'll remember Holloway conducted that community survey a couple months ago. Just want to make sure those results are there for you to see. If you want to dig through them, we have a high-level report. We've got a very lengthy report that has all the responses and comments and such there for you. By the end of the year, we expect to have the renewal website updated with project cut sheets. Recall, these are one-pagers that drill into specific projects, a little more detail, providing timeline, funding sources, project description, and such. All right, bringing forward some website visitation data for you this month. The metric I'm using, first of all, here is page views. Okay, so that's one visitor. And by the way, we average about 10,000 a month. One visitor will commonly look at multiple pages. So if you look at 4 pages, that's 4 page views. So if we go to 2018 to 2022, we were averaging 22,000 plus page views a month in that 5-year span. And then in 2023, the beginning of 2023, we enacted the strategic plan. And since that time, from 2023 to date, we're averaging 38,000 plus. So about a 72% uptick over the historical average. And we're continuing to see visitation trend upward. 2024 alone, we're at 44,000 plus page views per month on average. And then I've ranked the top 25 months there on the right. And everything just but the stuff in yellow are 2023 and 2024 months. So we're looking good. This is an important metric for us. We push to the website all the time in our communications for folks to get more information. So it's a nice gauge for us how we're doing overall. It by no means is a complete assessment. We do have other tools that we assess with, but this is a helpful gauge, and I think the numbers are encouraging. All right, on the next page, some current messaging pieces there. You likely saw the community impact article. This came out Friday. Every home in the Woodlands. We're getting a lot of comments and folks chiming in about it. So this was a nice piece for us. We'll also send this out via email and social media and other ways. Make sure folks are seeing that.
So you're able to capture these thoughts and ideas that people are sending in to you, or?
On this article?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
And sharing with Holloway as well when relevant. Yeah. We have a nice piece in Community Magazine, the latest issue on infrastructure in their November, December editions. And that full readable article, I think, is at the end of your packet. You didn't see that. Current month's water bill is on renewal. And then the upcoming bill will have a dual message there. One is reminding folks to turn off their water on their lawn for the winter. It's the best for their lawn, and it'll help them save money and water. And then also reminding them that winter sewer averaging starts December 1st, runs through the end of February. We're going to be pushing out a lot of winter sewer averaging to help folks, again, control their water bills all year long. And we got a couple things on the outreach calendar coming up. We're going to be at the Sterling Ridge VA Festival. That's Sunday, December 8th at Cranebrook Park. And then talking with Aaron about being a more regular presence at the Grogan's Mill Farmers Market. So I think we still need to maybe solidify some dates there, but I'm thinking maybe starting out once a month if that works for the farmers market. Just another way for us to get out in the community as best we can.
Yeah, we're excited for that partnership. Excellent.
Any questions?
Probably for Aaron, in your role at the farmers market, do we get a broad representation of Woodlands residents coming to the market, or do you have any information on?
No specific demographics, but yeah, widespread.
Okay, all right. So that would be a good opportunity.
I live in 47 in the opposite corner, and I certainly get there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. Right, thanks.
Excellent. All right, excellent. One just quick thought that came to mind as we were talking about the community working group. Is that subject to open meetings? It's advisory and there's no action being taken, right? It just occurred to me that we may have a quorum community working group.
Well, as long as you're not discussing district business.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're meeting,
This is about communications.
Right.
well, if it's a quorum of this board, then that would be a concern.
I don't think that's going to happen this year.
I don't know if as the public education committee going to be present. Deborah was nominated to represent Mud 6. I'll be representing Grogan's Mill.
Okay, that could that be a breach if all three are present? Just want to go by the book.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a unique situation. I understand that you're there not on behalf of the district, you're there on behalf of Grogan's Mill, but I feel like that's pretty close to the line. And it would be communications related to Woodlands Water, which would
come under open meetings.
Yeah.
So if one person stepped out of the room, at least there might be some introductory things that are being said that I might be part of. I'm happy to leave after that is over.
That's fine.
And because that's just a very general statement.
Right, and that's not deliberation about anything.
Okay, so that's covered.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Fair enough. All right.
Be in there.
Yeah, but then if you look-
I just give you an hour.
We just got him out.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah. I mean, no, I appreciate the counsel from our legal eagle over here. So, yeah. See, it works.
All right.
Always ask a lawyer.
Sometimes, depends on the lawyer.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Moving to item 15, receive the Woodlands Water Trustees reports.
Okay, starts on page 53 through page 55. I think Eric has covered one of the key things that are out there. I'm really excited about the progress that we're seeing with the communications. We've endeavored as the Public Education Committee to make as much information available to the public and involve the community in what is going to be happening in the future. Does anyone have any questions on the trustee report?
No questions. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Moving to item 16, executive session. Closed session.
Yeah. I would like the board and I to have a conversation about some questions and get some guidance from you, just as we've done here in open session. But this, I think, is regarding an appointment question that I need to get clarity on.
You talking about the item that's on the agenda?
Yeah.
So the questions come up in one other meeting, and so we can't go into closed session for personnel for that item here because this body is not the one doing the appointment.
Okay. All right. Well, that was the question, because it seems that the trustees have passed the ball, but I don't think that's in their
Right.
capacity to do.
And so that question has come up, and I think that's something that
Oh,
we'll certainly
okay.
talk about.
Yeah.
in open session. So the decision is the trustees. There was a motion to have the MUDs consider it to give direction to their trustee, but that's not required. The boards can do that, and we have done that on an informal basis. We semi-formalized it for the River Authority budgeting process, just so the trustee feels like they have a clear understanding of where their board is. But it's not required, and it's advisory. You could have the trustee go and vote a completely different way, and then the MUD board can come back and change their trustee the next month. But in terms of requiring, can the trustees require that the MUDs take a vote to give direction to their trustee? No, they cannot. You can hear from the candidates if you like. If you want to give direction for your trustee, this meeting would be the time to do it. If you want to tell your trustee, use your best judgment and make the decision, you can do that as well.
So I'm trying to think through this. We don't really have, well, we have a kind of a precedent from the past of, I think Jim Stinson would have appointed, recommended, pardon me, Mike to be the Woodlands Water representative. I mean, you were on the trustee board at the time.
As far as I can recall, it's correct.
Okay.
Recommendation.
So that's the only precedent we have.
Right. It's my understanding, it predated me, but it's my understanding that Mike was the only, from inception of that committee, Mike has been the appointee. Now, those terms, there are terms that every time it would end, it would come back to the trustees for the next, 4-year terms?
So this is an appointment
To the vacancy.
for the remainder
Maybe
of
2 years,
existing.
roughly 2 years of, I think, a 4-year term, if I'm not mistaken. And it has not, to my knowledge, gone back through the MUD process, but we've always had one person be the representative. So now that Mike stepped down, we have 2 folks who have been nominated at the trustee level. Vote by the trustees was to have discussion at the MUD level. And part of that was the trustee who, made the motion was not, was an alternate. But the entire trustee board voted to do that. So we've been having the discussion.
About one dissension.
I can't remember, to be honest with you. But regardless, it's up to each board how you want to handle it. You're not required, again, you're not required to take a vote, you're not required to give direction, and your trustee is not bound by the direction. So just to be clear.
So you mentioned the word process, and that's where I want to begin a conversation. We have a whole slew of policies relating to how we go about doing certain things. And it seems that this is to have Woodlands Water represented on the GRP review committee is a very important assignment, but there doesn't seem to be a way of saying, okay, this is how we're going to go about having people, perhaps multiple candidates, be reviewed, and out of those chosen by the board, there isn't the trustee board. Doesn't seem to be a way of managing that.
And that's been discussed at one of the prior meetings, at least one of the prior meetings. And I think the response from Eric, and feel free to chime in, is the first time it's come up with there being a vacancy that wasn't Mike. So there hasn't been a process for that. And, with boards for vacancies on a MUD, they're handled in any number of ways, as y'all, have seen in your time on the board. Boards can make a decision based on somebody that they know is interested and think would be a good fit. They take a vote. To the other end of the spectrum they do email blasts and all this and request folks who are interested to submit resumes, and then they go through all that. So you've got a spectrum, and you're not, there's not a requirement. That's part of the policy and the discretion of the board. And for this particular position, it's by the trustee board, and it's at the discretion of the trustee board how they want to handle it. If they want to take nominations based on, folks who have shown interest. If
Mhm.
they want to go through kind of the mud, into that one end of the mud director spectrum and do a blast out and request, folks to submit resumes if you're interested, that's at the discretion of the trustee board. And it just hasn't come up before. And I know Eric had some thoughts about how he might want to handle it in the future, but up until now, there hasn't been a need for that.
Well, that's it. There has been the need, but now it seems there's a need.
Right.
And I'm trying to understand that part of
Yeah,
it.
I mean, based on the process, I think there's been a lot of folks this go around that have been confused and,
Mhm.
it was trustee, but then, all that. So, and having heard the same question probably 2 or 3 times, as well from others, I think it's a good idea that we do kind of memorialize what the process should be going forward, for the next time that this is.
Because that'll be in 27
Right.
or 26, I
That's
suppose,
right.
December.
And
Yeah.
And those discussions would take place at the trustee meeting.
I would foresee that, we could develop a, recommended, process, and then the trustees would need to review that and approve it, would be my
Okay,
recommendation.
okay. Good, that's helpful to know that we would be considering memorializing a defined process that would be approved by the trustees. Well, my other concern is I fear we may end up with a split vote at the trustee level. My preference is a vote of confidence in the work you do in making a recommendation. But I'm trying to balance the appropriateness of ensuring there's the net is out there to capture people who are interested. And so that's one of the struggles I've been having to kind of manage this in the absence of a framework. So,
Well, that's something I think Metro talked about, asking their trustee to bring up to the trustees.
I'm sorry. Okay.
The same thing that you're talking about, a process for handling, and do they want to cast a broader net?
Okay. I wasn't aware of that, but there you go. Okay. Good. At least the same kinds of conversations are happening
Indeed.
elsewhere. Okay. I was thinking, if I bring this up, am I the only voice? Okay.
No, there's been a lot of confusion as to the
Yeah.
process and
Yeah.
how it's going, what should it have been, what should it be, what is it? And there just wasn't a precedent.
Does the vote of the trustees need to be unanimous?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I was expressing a concern that there would be a split vote. On the board. I prefer a unanimous vote. That's I mean, that would be my hope. But it's not clear to me.
Guess we'll see where the trustee meeting goes.
Yeah. I've had to change my calendar around to make sure I got there.
Well, we'll have more conversation on this as we go back to item 12, I'm sure. So no other reason to recess closed session. All right, reconvening an open session. So we will go back to item 12, which was consider and direct trustee to vote on appointment of vacant WWA seat at the SJRA GRP Review Committee.
I think we've talked quite a bit about how we got here, I guess. Had a lead in, but long story short, as mentioned a minute ago, the WWA has a seat on its GRP advisory committee, gives recommendations to the SJRA board of directors on the GRP. WWA has a seat that has been Mike Mooney since its inception. Mike turned in his resignation on that seat as it relates to his retirement from WWA. And so that seat is open. SJRA made me aware of that it was official, and then I brought it to the trustees. As mentioned earlier, the trustees decided to push it down to the MUDs to discuss. There were 2 candidates that were nominated. One was Kim Wright, our new deputy general manager. And then Brad Hauk from Mud 7 had indicated interest in the seat as well. So they have been attending and speaking to the boards. Their bios are in your packet. And so they're here to share any information that you'd like to hear from.
Yeah, why don't we hear from both?
We got,
You're not going to switch it up?
yeah.
So my summary's in the packet. Some of you did have an opportunity to kind of read through it. So I just wanted to take advantage and tell you just a little bit more about me and a little bit about my philosophy on the GRP. So, as you know, the GRP was planned and the surface water treatment plant was constructed as a solution for large volume groundwater users to achieve compliance with local rules and regulations. Although there are currently no rules and regulations in place, the existing GRP contract signed still remain. There is a responsibility of the GRP review committee members to advise in a manner that that considers the needs that exist for today and for in the future, along with the consideration of the cost associated with those needs, with meeting those needs. As a member of the GRP review committee, I recognize the need to make available and provide the needed resources, such as affordable clean drinking water and other utilities for this fast-growing area, while also making the decisions that protect our aquifers today and also in the future. There may be limitations with the existing GRP contract with adding new participants at this time. There are no rules and regulations currently in place to drive the need or demand for surface water. However, remaining vigilant to think outside the box, collaboratively and cohesively to promote efficiency and continuous use and utilization of the surface water treatment plant needs to occur. I am technical minded. My knowledge, background, and experiences are diverse. I understand projects, budgets, asset management, operations, and maintenance. One must be engaged in the details when required and supported by knowledgeable resources and staff. Relationships and communications are key to making progress. I have successfully planned for and managed multi-million-dollar assets, budgets, and capital projects in multiple roles. I have collaborated significantly to achieve operational successes and to achieve defined goals. This has been possible by not knowing all the answers, but through my understanding and experiences, collaboration, and accurate data gathering for making recommendations and informed decisions. I could not have done it without diversified and collaborative teams that have included strong leadership, engineers, technical staff, operations, maintenance, legal, engineers, consultants, directors, trustees. Definitely a teams achieve success, right? I am a Woodlands Water employee, not elected, I'm neutral. My background in this industry and working in multiple disciplines reflects my ability and desire to work with the public and to support our community. I am the right person to represent the Woodlands Muds and would be honored to do so. I ask for your vote, your support, and your recommendation for your trustee to place a vote to consider me. So with that, just wanted to tell you guys, and I've repeated it several times, and I mean it over and over. I'm glad to be here, glad to be part of this team. No matter what happens, I'm here to support y'all and the staff. So, and thank y'all for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for letting me spend a couple minutes with you guys. Because I didn't know most of you probably don't know me. I've interacted with Neil a couple times, but I'm not sure about the rest of y'all. So what I'd like to do, tell you a little bit about myself. I assume you've read my resume, but I'll add a little bit of color to that. Talk a little bit about why I'm here. I mean, why is this guy in front of you talking about wanting to be on the GRP? Then I'll talk a little bit about really my vision for the GRP, my concern for the GRP, my passion for the GRP. Okay, so going back to who am I? I moved to Woodlands in 2014, worked for ExxonMobil. We consolidated the campus down in Spring, relocated here. A bachelor's of chemical engineering from Georgia Tech, professional engineer when I was working, when inactive, when I went into retirement, retired in 2021. ExxonMobil career and working hydrocarbon processing industry, did a wide range of tasks, research, engineering, technical support for operations, management of small teams, management of large projects, skill set across all the engineering analysis, and technical assessment. So you've talked some about decision matrix. I know how to do decision matrix, do economic analysis, comparatives between different technologies, done all that over the 40 years I spent with Exxon, or in the hydrocarbon processing industry. So I think my background, my skills are a good match to drive change the GRP. So why am I here wanting to be on the GRP board? Well, when I became a MUD director back in 2022, in the process of campaigning and then joining the MUD, GRP was brand new to me. It's like most residents, I don't think, have a clue what GRP does. They don't know about surface water, they don't know about groundwater, they don't know about subsidence, they don't know about, a lot of things. So I started getting involved in that. Meanwhile, if a resident of Montgomery County, it's not too hard before you learn about the water wars we have in Montgomery County. And it became clear that there's a lot of conflict going on in the county, and GRP is the center of a big part of it. As I looked at the data, I listened to the expert, I became more and more convinced that the increasing use of surface water is critical to the Woodlands and Montgomery County. In practice, what we've seen over the last many years, the taxpayers put in tremendous investment to build a plant that for years and years has been running at half capacity. Okay, there's a lot of reasons for that, but as far as I can tell, nobody's driving change to increase the capacity of that plant and address the issues we have in the county. We have Conroe preparing to build or drill 4 new wells. Okay, you've got the subsidence data in your monthly package. That's not going to help things. Okay, why can't we find a way to make greater utilization of that treatment plant and reduce groundwater and increase surface water? That's my question. That's my charge. That's my proposition to you guys as my directors and to the trustees is let me be an agent of change. Okay. I think the GRP is divided. I think there's some people that are aligned with my philosophy of we need to increase throughput, but that's not a majority. Hopefully, if I go on the GRP, I can drive that over to the majority position. There's a lot of challenges, but I think if you come together, you can work through those challenges to make change that's needed to increase surface water. I've been challenged to say, well, what happens if it's not possible? Well, I haven't had the data. I haven't done the analysis. I would say one thing that's a clear gap we have in the county, even within the Woodlands, is we have failed to win the hearts and souls of people to understand the importance of surface water. Most people don't care whether you want surface water or groundwater. They want the cheapest water they can. What they don't understand is the consequences of doing that. Okay. And sure, it's not like your car gets hit or your tap doesn't flow. It's a long-term consequence. But if you talk to your neighbors that have had subsidence issues and had to do costly repairs, it becomes real. And the data we have supports subsidence. Okay. So we can no longer remain at the status quo and say, well, we'd like to increase surface water, but we really can't. No, we've got to find a way to move forward. So that's my pitch. That's my passion. I would ask that you would consider directing your trustee to support my nomination to the GRP advisory board. We also add in closing, they call it the advisory board. Chris has confirmed during the meetings this week that in almost all instances, the board of directors for the River Authority implement whatever the advisory board put forward. So this is a very, very important position where you can have the potential to drive forward the path of the GRP being on the advisory board. A couple other things. I feel like I'm closing. I will close. Questions have come up about my ability to represent all the woodlands and the water agency. I assure you, if appointed to this position, I will do that. Yes, I'm a director and a trustee from MUD 7, but this isn't about MUD 7. In fact, it's not even about just the woodlands. It's about Montgomery County and the water situation countywide. So I'm committed to work with Eric. You come up to speed. I think the situation Arthur has with the Region H representation is a good model to go by, where Arthur comes into the trustees on a regular basis, provides updates. I'd be happy to do that as representative to the GRP. Okay, so full representation, good transparency, good working relationship with Eric, and somebody's asked, would I mind as part of Kim coming on board, because it'll be important for her career development to understand what's happening at GRP, even though she's worked 22 years for the River Authority. I have no problem at all. I'd be happy to embrace her and have her shadow me, have us stay connected on what's happening in GRP. But I think it's important that we make a change, that we go forward with a trustee representing the WWA and drive change to the GRP. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Brad?
Okay.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
Any questions or discussion, comments, thoughts? And just to, I know we were touching on this earlier. So the underutilization of the GRP is really tied to the regulatory requirements and just the lack of user demand, right?
Well, as a candidate, can I comment on that?
If you don't mind, we yeah, just if we could hear from Chris first.
I'd like to hear his answer. It originally started back in FY 17, FY 18. So 2017, 2018, due to financial issues with Conroe not paying. They continue not to fully pay everything, but then when the regulation changed in 2020, it maintained at that point 12 MGD, but we were able to find another MGD. So now we're at 13. But it is current. The word on the street is because of lack of regulations, we have not increased it so far.
Okay.
Sorry, for lack of regulations, that's kind of open-ended. About what specifically?
When Lone Star changed the rules from the.
Oh, Lone Star, Lone Star
Correct.
you're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Brad, did you have different feedback on that?
No, not different, complementary.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion, the business models, and one of the things you got to realize, GRP is set up in a government dictated model. Okay, it wasn't set up in a private enterprise model or a cost basis model. GRP basis was we'll increase surface water because of government mandate. Okay, the pricing model was set based upon government mandate. That government mandate was rescinded when the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation relaxed the requirements. So what we have now, we've got a pricing model that depends upon government mandate, but we don't have a government mandate. Okay, so we're stuck with a plant that's in a gray area. Okay, we're only operating 0.5% or 50% half full, and yet we say, well, we don't have a pricing mechanism that allows us to grow. Well, for several years, maybe they didn't have any extra increase. Now we are seeing some demand where new people, not new GRP members, but people that are not currently using surface water would like to use surface water. And they've been, for the most part, said, well, we don't have ability to increase capacity because we don't have a pricing model to do that. It's been 4 years now since groundwater, the Lone Star changed the regulation. It's time to go on and stop using it as an excuse. We've got to find a way. Now, the real problem, well, not real problem, a problem, is we don't have the hearts and souls of the community behind us. Everybody says, oh, I don't want to pay a penny more for water. Well, we got to go convince them that using surface water is the right thing, even though it might cost more. At the end of the day, I may be totally wrong. The community may say, I don't care how much subsidence we have. We're going to keep using the cheapest water we can. Okay, if that happens, it happens. But I feel like we haven't been transparent. We haven't explained the cost benefit analysis, and we certainly haven't publicized the value of surface water. Okay, we got to do that.
Sure.
Okay, so that's part of what I think the problem is.
Excellent.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's consistent.
I'd like to hear from Jim on this topic because I want to make sure things are balanced for my benefit in terms of thinking
Right.
about next month.
Right, no, sure. I mean, I think there is a conversation to be had, obviously, on, you know, what the options are for considering new participants. And then, of course, that involves a discussion about the existing GRP contract and how that can be revised and what kind of agreement must occur between all the existing participants potentially. And so it is, I don't know the answer to that. It's obviously a barrier, you know, and then also just understanding what the impact to the cost is with increasing the current pumpage for the existing customers and what that will do without a significant increase, you know. You know, I think, don't know the answers really, you know, it's just getting in there and understanding kind of what's going on and how we can work together to explore some of the options and the needs and working together, you know, to come up with, you know, maybe an approach forward, you know. But first we need to identify, you know, some goals to try to achieve, to open those discussions, to explore, you know, what is it that the GRP wants to achieve through increasing utilization of the plan? Is that with the existing participants? Is that, you know, consideration of external customers that are inquiring, potential customers? There's cost associated with that, significant cost. Who bears the burden of those costs, you know? So, of course, I've been out of touch with it, you know, for many years. And so for me to speak on it as an expert, I can't do that. But just from my background knowledge, you know, I would need to go in and hope that we could identify some talking points and set some goals to kind of help facilitate discussion to hopefully bring the committee at some point together to be able to have some conversations and with input, obviously, from SGRA and the consultants, you know, to help everybody understand what the limitations are with the existing contracts that are in place and what would be required to consider, you know, adding participants, you know. Obviously, utilization of the plant is a strong talking point and concern, something that we need to talk about, and reaching out and, you know, making sure that the public is engaged. I know there, you know, in the past, just speaking from my experience from being at SGRA and GRP, I know there's been public outreach opportunities and stuff, you know, but maybe looking at what, you know, they do outreach. But maybe it's just having those discussions and getting input from everybody in the GRP. If we feel a certain way, if we feel like we're not connecting or, you know, targeting certain audiences, then give us, you know, let's provide that feedback to SGRA, you know, so versus saying they're not doing it. Let's give them constructive feedback, all of us that's in the GRP, so that they can help improve or target those areas. So to help educate the public. So I do feel like the use of surface water is so important. I'm probably just as passionate about it, been in the industry so long, you know. And I was there, you know, working with engineers and planners 20 something years ago, looking out, you know, and, you know, for water supply and, you know, surface water is really important. We need to do what we can to utilize that plant to protect our aquifers, for not only us, but for our future, right? And then also the ramifications that come with depleting our aquifers, you know, the wells, the impact to our wells dropping, you know. And so anyway, you know, I don't know those answers. I don't know the answers. I don't know the path forward. I feel confident if I got in there, I would work collaboratively at the table. That's just my approach, to take the technical information, any information from the planners, anybody, accounting, whatever it is, to consider all aspects and to take into consideration the best interest of the GRP and the existing participants, while also considering the potential for any future participants. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken.
Just, I want to make an immediate comment based on what both Kim and Brad said in regard to educating the public. This is something I plan to take up with the PEC as part of their agenda next month. I want to put that seed in there, say, okay, what are the gaps? This is part of of course, we've been trying to educate about infrastructure renewal. Well, this is an element, clearly. And so we need to get a bit more educated ourselves on the PEC about some of the complex issues that we're dealing with. But I want us to at least begin the conversation, not so much as to, you know, just to get people, make the community aware of what the issues are. So I think you both make good points in that regard, and I appreciate that. So anyway, that's one take home for me. So I don't know if you have any comment, Eric, on what I just.
On communications?
Yeah.
No, as I recall, when I was in the private sector when this was all going down, SGRA did a pretty significant public outreach wrapped around the idea of the GRP many years ago. Obviously, it was in response to the regulations that were in place at the time. You know, I think I'd mentioned to another board that, you know, I was involved in, so all large groundwater users were mandated to find another water source by a certain date, right? So SGRA created one, a bunch of people added on, but I had a number of clients that actually created their own GRP and found their own way to handle the alternative water source. And so, and it was a challenging time for all of the large groundwater users at that time to figure it out, because, you know, not everybody had a lake at their disposal, you know, to build their own surface water plant. I guess luckily, I don't know if it was luck or not, but around that time, folks had the idea of drilling a little bit deeper into a little bit different aquifer and crossing their fingers, and in some cases it worked. Catahoula, which was, and that was under question, whether or not the Catahoula was going to be classified as the Gulf Coast Aquifer, because the Gulf Coast Aquifer, which is defined by the Chico, Evangeline, and the Jasper, were the ones that were being regulated. And so the question was this deeper one part of that regulation? And the answer finally came out no. And then a couple of these municipalities were able to drill and get clean enough water. It was real hot and a little bit salty, but it was within the limits in most cases, and some failed. Some drilled and it was not usable. But so anyway, folks, you know, and with no regulation now, they spend a lot of money on their infrastructure, and now it's an asset obviously for them. They've got a well and it works and all that. But so I know that there was a lot of communication going on because I was seeing it, you know, but there's a lot of time that's going on. There's a lot of lawsuits that have gone on in between. People don't really understand, you know, what really happened and now I still pay, but I don't have what, you know, and why is that? And so I do think, you know, if there's going to be an outside the box solution to either be able to get new GRP members, and I don't even know if you call them that because it's not a reduction plan anymore, but you know, new users that aren't part of the initial 80 or the existing 80, you got to incentivize them. So either the market's going to incentivize them, government or regulation is going to incentivize them, or money's going to incentivize them, and that's the market. And what I'm hearing from some of my other colleagues is the price of water wells has increased significantly over the last few years. And I'm getting hints that there's some folks out there that are leaning towards, well, you know what, maybe surface water might be close to being more affordable, because historically groundwater was so cheap to just drill a well, $1 million or whatever you need, and drill a well. It's clean water. You hardly have to disinfect it. You throw a little chlorine and you're ready to go. So that's this region of Texas, you know. So I definitely think additional public outreach is necessary.
Okay.
On a lot of fronts, whether it's SGRA or Woodlands Water, all the above, I guess.
Okay, we'll take that on, but at a lower priority. Okay. We've got all the other things to inform the public about. Thank you, appreciate that.
I'll go ahead and share my thoughts. First, I want to say we appreciate the interest and the passion, and the position from both Kim and Brad. I think it sounds like everybody shares the same goals for the GRP, which obviously is good to hear. And I think both of you would bring fresh perspectives to that committee, which could help us achieve those goals. Whatever candidate the trustees do decide to move forward with, I would certainly hope that we could look at ways to just maintain communication, and maybe based on the conversations thus far, do more to solicit feedback and ideas from folks at the MUD level or the trustees, just in terms of how we can work to achieve those goals. I am personally more comfortable with that position being held by an employee of Woodlands Water, just in terms of the regular communication with you, Eric, regular attendance at the MUD meetings, but then also certainly the representation of all 10 MUDs in terms of their role. So for that reason, I would propose that we support Eric's recommendation and consider moving forward with Kim as a representative on the GRP. But any other thoughts?
We have two qualified candidates. My personal concern is as agents of change, how we're going to best accomplish our goals, which is going to be the best agent of change. There are untold number of challenges within the GRP as potential sources. It's a disappointment to me in the last almost 10 years that we've not been successful in having the GRP accomplish its goals at tremendous expense to a lot of entities, including the Woodlands. And I just look forward to the best way of accomplishing these changes.
Thoughts?
I agree. Two excellent candidates. I was going to recommend that we leave the decision up to our trustee.
And I would hope, again, whichever direction the trustee board goes. I mean, I think both of you have, again, the same passion, and obviously you've heard probably plenty this week that everybody's focused on how we achieve the same things at the GRP. And obviously, whichever direction it goes, I think each of you can be a resource to the other, it sounds like, in terms of being able to accomplish that. So
I'd like to add to what Pat said too. I would like to defer to our trustee. I've grown to have a tremendous amount of respect for Neil as president, trustee, business, human, and background, very appropriate, and your drive to want to do the right thing. So I would defer to our trustee.
All right. Appreciate the non-advice. I will, it's really good advice. And I will have questions for Eric. I'll have more questions for you initially anyway.
Okay.
I'll probably have questions for Chris. Are you able to answer on behalf of the GRP division, or do I have to talk to somebody else?
I'm the GRP administrator, so
Oh, you're it.
I'm the dude.
Hey,
So I defer to Eric.
I mean, come on, you can't do that. You're independent contractors.
That's true.
You just said it, remember?
This contract, not GRPs.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay.
Answer anything you have.
So Neil, what would you prefer? You would prefer a recommendation or would you prefer leaving the decision up to you?
I have a sense, Aaron clearly stated what he wanted me to do. I mean, that would be advice, but I don't really have a viewpoint from my other two colleagues on the board at this time. Whether or not, whatever direction you choose, whether or not I would use that in the decision-making process, of course I would. But as Brian said earlier, it does not necessarily mean I would take that advice, and you could fire me at the next MUD 6 meeting, and that.
Very hypothetical scenario.
Oh, you said it. I mean, I'm putting your words back at you. Well, not fire, but remove, I think.
Well, I think we have a lot of trust in you is what we're saying.
Okay, well.
And,
Trustee.
trust in your analysis. So,
Okay, I assure you, this is a matter of greatest concern to me as well, as was expressed here. The thing in the back of my mind is SGRA has an allocation of 33,300 acre feet per year, and that's tops. City of Houston has the rest. If I do a rough calculation, 30 million gallons a day takes us over that allocation. So it would have to be less than that, however that is designed.
33,000 and change?
Yeah.
Yeah,
30 million a
we
day
can
is.
go through those details later, because
Right, well, those kind of questions I mean, there are costs involved in expanding the operations of the plant. I want to make sure I can comprehend over the next couple of weeks.
let's run through those thresholds and where they sit and where we go to City of Houston's water and the
Yeah,
cost.
and that reminds me that we had a deferral of discussion about GRP and water rate structure for a couple of weeks for reasons that we did not share, but obviously.
Presenting that to the review committee in January.
Okay.
It's going through a consultant review right now. But as soon as I can present it, I'm more than happy to present it because I think it'll answer a lot of questions that a lot of y'all are asking. So.
Thank you. I really appreciate your presentations and discussions of strengths. It's very good. Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. I think that concludes that agenda item unless you guys have
Yes.
other questions. All right. Excellent.
Yeah, we are kind of running out of time for the next board meeting that starts.
Oh,
Yep,
wow.
You're it. All right. So discuss any matters for future placement on the agenda. We've got we said we would do the working group on 12/16 and open meeting. With that,
That's just a workshop. There will be no Monday. No.
Yeah, let's work it out.
Yep. All right. So 3:00 we will adjourn.
Thank you. Sorry, going over time.
We're all about the same.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
so